Today's guest is someone I have never met in person, but because I've been doing these now for a while, I've had a few people start saying, hey, you really ought to ask this person. So Sarah, who will be joining us shortly here, was one of those people. I've seen her on social media and some of the work that she's done. And then I had a couple people go ahead and say, hey, you ought to invite her to do this. So looks like, yep, Sarah, I see that you joined. And she has sent a request, so let's go ahead and welcome Sarah. Should come your way in a second for you to approve, Sarah. Looking forward to seeing you.
Hey.
There she is.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing very well, thank you. It's good to meet you, even though it's an Instagram Live. It's so nice to finally meet you in person. I've seen some of your work on social.
Good to meet you too.
And I've had a lot of people say, hey, you know, if you're going to be doing these for a while, you should get a hold of Sarah. So I reached out to you, and here we are.
Yeah.
So
great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? Yes. No, thank you for making time today, too. It's one of those things where I get a big kick out of doing these because normally as a spokesperson, I do all the talking. So it's nice for me to be able to ask questions and then just listen to the stories. So I've been having fun with them. So I do appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Okay, so to start off with, any of my followers who may not know who you are, can you kind of give a quick description of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm Sarah McAnulty. I am a squid biologist living in Philadelphia. I also run the science communication nonprofit called Skype a Scientist. We match, basically we're trying to get scientists talking to as many people as humanly possible. So we match scientists with classrooms, scout troops, and during the pandemic, people who are just at home looking for something to do and are interested in having a conversation about science. And so we match about 10,000 groups a year. We're already at like 6,300 some in 2020 because it's been a wild year and people are just kind of stuck at home. So yeah, that's basically what I do. I am super enthusiastic about talking about squid and the ocean and love all kinds of animals. But squid are my specialty.
Very cool. Then I have to ask, just out of my own curiosity and completely off script, what was it about squid that grabbed your attention, for lack of
Yeah, so squid are behaviorally complex and weird and do all sorts of cool stuff that like it's kind of hard to imagine yourself doing. Like the color changing ability and the communication that they do between each other with their color change and that pattern, and it's just like so amazing to me that it like captured me when I was a little kid, and I pretty much was hell-bent on being a squid biologist from the time I was about 8. I was super obsessed with dinosaurs, and then I saw a cuttlefish for the first time on like a National Geographic tape I took out of the library, and like that was it. I was like, okay, dinosaurs, cool, cuttlefish, amazing. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just like, yeah, their behavior and how gorgeous they are, and yeah.
Oh, they're amazing. I'm fascinated by the cuttlefish, and I feel like I have not had a chance to really learn enough about them. But whenever we're watching any sort of, you know, series on TV, documentary, whatever, and like there's a blip about cuttlefish, like, oh, what
yeah.
more?
It's always the highlight of every documentary. It's
They're
amazing.
so fascinating. They're so fascinating.
For sure.
So going back now to OnScript, this whole process for me started leading into Endangered Species Day. I thought it'd be fun as someone who delivers spiels of information about species and conservation that we do and all of that. And we kind of have our go-to copy points or message points all the time. And they're all effective and good. And I'm not going to stop doing them. But I thought it would be fun to be able to get sort of more personal side of things and start asking people who do similar work or even science communication for their most memorable animal moment. Because, you know, I think on a human level, people not in the animal business or animal conservation world or science world, they can kind of relate to those emotions that we exude, if not the actual situation. So that's what started all this. But before we jump into the actual reason we're here, you did mention you've seen an increase in the Skype of scientists and all of that. One thing I think many people are curious about as I've been interviewing all these different people, has the pandemic and the way our society has changed over the last few months impacted your work? Better, worse, not changed at all?
Yeah, so my squid work has taken a hit for sure, because typically I would literally be in Hawaii right now collecting squid to send back to the lab in Connecticut. But I'm sitting in my office in Philadelphia, and I've been sitting in this room for like 3 months straight. So yeah, typically my job is kind of strange as far as scientists go. Typically, you know, you get your PhD and then you work in a lab for a little bit, and then you start to run a lab on your own. And I'm taking a kind of strange path in that I got my PhD, and now I'm running this science communication nonprofit because it just felt so urgent and important compared to the work I was doing in my PhD. Not that that wasn't important or wasn't exciting. I loved it. It's just this felt so essential to be done immediately that I'm switching to this full time. But I'm still doing a little squid biology because I go to Hawaii twice a year and collect those squid and send them back to my lab. So pretty much the squid biology lab that I used to work for,
you froze
they're
for a
all
bit.
just like, are we good?
Oh,
Can you
you're
hear
frozen.
me?
Oh no.
Oh no, oh no.
Oh, almost. Just hang tight. It usually straightens out. It happens every single time we do these, so don't worry. Hopefully
Okay, I'll just keep talking.
Oh, you're moving now.
Am I good? Am I good?
Okay, yes, you're back now. Yes.
Back. Okay. Whew. Okay. So yeah, the squid biology lab has kind of hit a pause button. They're all just kind of processing the data that they have already collected. But oh my God, the science communication has been booming because everyone, first of all, are suddenly like really realizing how essential science is to their everyday lives, because we're completely relying right now on our scientists and public health folks to tell us what's going on, help keep us safe during the pandemic. So I think for that reason, we have an increase in interest in science. But then, you know, your gateway might be coronavirus, but now you can talk about really whatever science you want, because we have 5,000 scientists ready to go and chat with whoever. So yeah, that's kind of what's been different during the pandemic, but overall, no complaints. We're all good.
Well, and I guess it does sort of speak to the scientific thought process that when sudden changes happen in our environment, we must adapt or die. So, yeah. I mean, yay for you for having Skype a scientist available to adapt into while you wait for the opportunity to get back out there and do more squid work. So at least there's that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I honestly, just for myself, the Skype a Scientist thing is just so awesome. I thought it was a great program before we found ourselves locked at home, and the fact that you've been spearheading that, putting it together, it's just so wonderful because, you know, like right now, you and I are chatting because of Instagram and no other reason really. I mean, you know, in social media. And so having put together something that's a little more formal where you can have people request to Skype with a scientist is great. So I just want to add that to my own personal opinion on that. So that's cool. But now it's a question of the hour, or the half hour, I guess. What is, or what was, your most memorable animal encounter?
I've been really lucky in my life in that I've had a lot of experiences with animals over the course of my life, both in the wild and in the lab in captivity. But I think the first one that like really blew my mind completely was that so over the course of my career, back when I was an undergrad and before that, I had been reading all about all the various behaviors that squid do out in the wild, but I hadn't really seen much of it because I didn't know how to scuba dive. I was living in Philly. I like wasn't really going to the ocean where a lot of these squid lived a lot when I was growing up. But then I was a junior in college and I was down in Belize taking a field course. And one thing that I read about in books is that these Caribbean reef squid, which are about like yay big and like really beautiful, they kind of look like ovals with a big bed skirt all around the side. They're really beautiful. What they do when they're mating, when they have like a mating pair, the female will put on like a pattern that communicates to the male that she's like happy, basically. And then the male will split his body pattern in half down the middle. And the half that faces her is like friendly and positive. Oh. And then the half that faces everybody else, like potential males that may want to like take over his spot, is like this bright white aggressive pattern. And so he's simultaneously talking to her and talking to everybody else with the patterns on his body. And I had always read about it. I've seen videos, you know, in documentaries, but I'd never seen it in real life. And then I was snorkeling, swimming through the water, and I saw 2 squid in that pattern. And I was just like, oh my God, like everything I've read is just like, is real. Like, of course it's real, but when you see it in real life, it's just like, oh my God, like it's not that weird to see. It's like super exciting. And so seeing that, that behavior in the wild was like, it just filled me with joy. It was really amazing.
I'm just imagining, did you freak out in the moment? Like, you know, like just, I don't know. I mean, I was usually when you see something like that you have read about, studied about, seen either a video of or in books, but then to see it in person like that, I mean, were you able to keep calm and then celebrate later, or what was that?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't take my eyes away from those 2 squid. I was just like, you gotta stay calm, because if you freak out, they'll freak out. So you just gotta like be like, this is cool. This is totally normal. We're just gonna roll with it. And yeah, that was totally amazing. And that same field trip, I was swimming along, and a remora stuck to me, which was really amazing. They're those fish that will like stick to the bottom of whale sharks or other big fish, and then like gobble little bits and pieces that fall out of the other animal's mouth. And they have this goofy flat face that looks like a ridgy suction cup. They're so strange. Right. But if you're slowly swimming along, they'll be like, well, there's a big fish. I can stick on that. And it stuck to me, and I was also just like, very cool.
That's totally awesome. That's crazy. I've never heard of them sticking to a human before. Because they're pretty long, right? I mean,
it was maybe like a foot long. Yeah, but it's long enough that like it could stick to my thigh and have room to move. Yeah.
That's funny. That's so cool. And with the squid, when you saw them, how far away from you were they? Were they like 10 feet away, or was it pretty close?
Pretty close, like less than 10 feet. So Caribbean reef squid and reef squid that live all throughout the Indo-Pacific as well, they're very curious creatures. And so when they see a human, they're like, huh, I've never seen one of those before. And they'll often like come up to you and try to be like, what's your deal? Who are you? Like, what's going on? And so if you rapidly approach them, they're gonna head out of there. But if you're just chilling, they're gonna be like, they're as curious about you as you are about them. Right. So reef squid often are like, and cuttlefish as well, are often just like the kinds of animals that you have these really special encounters with, because they're not necessarily afraid of you, a little wary of you, but they're curious and want to know what's going on. And so that makes them really fun.
That's great. I'm jealous, honestly. I think all, you know, they're just so fascinating. And like you had mentioned at the top of this, what caught your attention at a young age, just they do so many things we cannot do. And there seems to be like a lot of conscious thought behind what they're doing. So, I mean, that's so cool. And that split body pattern, how awesome.
So cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we have some extra time, and so I want to ask you some things that I'm curious about.
Great.
First of all, what's your favorite species that you've studied of the squids, or can you pick one because there's so many?
There's so many, and they all do such unique things. Like, people might think of squid and just imagine the calamari that you get on a plate, but squid are so varied. Like, you might think of the giant squid or something like that.
Right.
But there are squid, of course, like that are 40 feet long. The giant squid, the colossal squid, which is just about that long, but much, much, much thicker. But then there are these teeny tiny little squid, the pygmy squid, that live in Australia, and they are like tiny, like the length of your pinky fingernail, but also amazing because they have the ability to kind of decide whether they want to be sticky or not sticky. And so you'll have this like blade of seagrass, and this little squid just like sticks itself to the seagrass, and then its little face is here and like looking around for something to eat. So if a little thing goes by, it's just like, I'm seagrass, nothing to see here, and then grabs the food, which is amazing. Like, they're like the Post-it notes of the sea. They also are totally amazing because they will, so there are various ways that squid use their ink. They use it like a big smoke bomb to just like make everything impossible to see, or they squirt out a little blob that they mix in with mucus to make what's called a pseudomorph. And so that's like a blob about the same size and shape as them, so that the predator attacks the blob of ink instead of them. Now, the pygmy squid is really cool because it'll shoot out a blob of ink and then hide behind that blob of ink, keeping an eye on whatever it wants to eat, a shrimp, what have you, and then pounce through the blob of ink and attack the prey. So it's basically using its ink like a hunting blind.
Right.
And scientists only even noticed that they were doing this like 5 years ago. Like we just didn't even notice. So there's so much to learn still about squid, even that are living like right next to the dock in Australia. Like, what else do we not notice is happening? And so in terms of my favorite species, like maybe the giant Australian cuttlefish, they're like a meter long, have really, some squid like kind of just go between like brownish red and white, but these have so many colors. They have blue, green, like a literal rainbow all in one animal. And they're huge. They're like a meter long.
Wow.
And they all gather together in huge groups in the winter, their winter, our summer, for mating. And so on my bucket list, my #1 bucket list item is to see that. But like, yeah, my favorite species changes with the weather. It's like hard to pick just one.
with whatever one you're looking at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of the same for me on other species and all the different things I work with. I want to go back though to the realization that you said it's a pygmy squid that uses the ink blob sort of as a hunting blind.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
Yep.
so you said that was just figured out or observed about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's in my head immediately. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What other squid species might be doing this? We just haven't observed it yet.
Oh, right. And there are so many deep sea squid. They're doing wild stuff that we're only just seeing now because we have the ability to have much better cameras than we used to. The deep sea squid are super diverse as well. They use a lot of bioluminescence for stuff. They're amazing. And then I don't remember exactly when we discovered the squid, but it's the spookiest squid I've ever seen. It's called Magna pinna, which basically means big fin. It's called the big fin squid or the long arm squid, depending on who you ask. This squid has 8-meter long arms that just like kind of look like elbows. Like if you've ever seen those videos of the squid at the oil rig, they're pretty big. They're like person-sized-ish. And so they've got these big, like slowly undulating fins because they're not really moving that fast. And then they have these arms sticking out at like little elbow right angles that just like dangle 8 meters. And we think it's like they want more opportunity to bump into something in the water. But they're just like dangling. They're like so spooky looking. And so what the hell are they doing? Like it's just, it's so fun.
You would think maybe they're trolling for something, or that's crazy.
Yeah, maybe.
It's exactly. It's like, yeah, maybe we still need to find out.
We don't know. Yeah, it's so cool.
All right, one more personal question I have for you. I've talked about this with regards to chameleon and their color changing, but I don't know enough about marine life. I want to hear from you. How do squids change their colors and their patterns? Obviously, like we mentioned, kind of on a conscious level, if they can show the lady side, hey, I'm happy like you're happy, but the other side, y'all better stay back. I mean, that's clearly got some sort of conscious level there. But aside from it being a conscious level, what happens on the cellular level that their skin can change into a variety of colors or patterns?
I'm so glad you asked because this is so cool. Okay, so squid.
I'm geeking out right now, by the way.
This is great. Yeah, I can geek out about squid any day of the week. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So they have 3 layers of color changing structures. And the top layer that you see changing the most and like flashing is called a chromatophore. And so chromatophores, imagine like a really tiny, really dense beach ball of color. And so that beach ball is surrounded by a bunch of muscles that can contract and pull that beach ball into a huge pancake. And the pancake is when you actually see the color. It can be red, brown, yellow, orange. And so that's what is sort of, if you've ever seen the passing cloud maneuver where you see this like black band that kind of looks like a hypnotist wheel going across the body of the squid or cuttlefish, that's what's doing that. Okay, and then below that you have iridophores. And iridophores, instead of changing by just like opening and closing, they move much slower, but they're really kind of like sparkly and reflective. And instead of being just one color that they can open or close, they basically are like reflectors that can change shape. And so the shape that they are determines what color gets reflected back. And they can go between like purple, blue, green, yellow, depending on how much hormone of a given hormone is around. Now, the chromatophores are directly wired to the brain, so they can change as quickly as the squid thinks about it. So they change at the speed of thought, which if you ever like look really close at the aquarium at a cuttlefish, you'll notice there's just like kind of always shimmering a little bit. And that's because those chromatophores are just kind of like opening, closing constantly. And then below those two layers are something called leucophores, and not everybody has leucophores, but those that do, they just shine back whatever color you shine at them, which is white.
Hold on. Don't
finish no, not again.
Hold on, you're breaking up.
Oh no. Am I still here? How about now? How about now?
Oh, Sarah, hold on, Sarah. We're losing it.
I'm here.
Losing it. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Am I back?
We'll pop back now. Okay. So you're there now. So it started breaking up right as you went into the third layer.
Oh, right. Okay. So leucophores are the third layer, and they will reflect back whatever color you give them. So typically white is what you'll see. And so that is the most perfect white that we know of in the animal kingdom. So there are material scientists looking at leucophores, trying to see, like, in your e-readers, if you want that background to be completely white, they're working on using that. So not everybody has leucophores, but those that do, like cuttlefish have, well, some cuttlefish have it. And so they'll be able to be super, super white. And so all of those layers together is what creates the full pattern that you see on the squid. Yeah, so that's how they do it.
No.
Am I breaking up again? Oh my gosh. I'm gonna just like, I'm gonna move.
That it's very cool. I know it's chopping up. I apologize to anybody watching this. It got kind of choppy at the end, but we did get to hear everything you were saying. Are you able to hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
How about now? Are we getting better?
Oh, there we go. Oh, you're on the move.
Yeah, I'm hoping if I move closer to the router, it'll be happier. Darker, but all right. How about now? Any better?
Yes, definitely better now. A little bit
great.
darker, but we can hear and see you, so that's good. So either way, though, we did get to hear all the bits and pieces that kind of chopped through. So thank you for that extra information to fulfill my desire to learn more about how squids do that, because I've always been fascinated by it, but I just figured it happens so quickly and fast, and the pattern's definitely different than chameleons, so I'm sure there was more to it. So that is cool.
Yeah.
I understand that the different layers are translucent or transparent to a certain degree, but is it the... I guess, can you explain maybe a little better than I can how that works? I'm guessing the average person who might be listening to this would be thinking, okay, if there's 3 layers, how can the bottom layer show through if the top layer is doing something? Is there knowledge behind how that works?
Sure, yeah. So basically squid skin is pretty much see-through. And so the chromatophores are, when they're expanded, you pretty much just see that chromatophore. But some species have chromatophores so densely populated on the skin that when they're all expanded, you really wouldn't be able to see what's going on underneath. But in some species, like a market squid that you might eat in California or on the East Coast here, there just aren't enough of them, so you can easily see through to the iridophores. And so a lot of the underside of animals don't have as many of those chromatophores, and that like shiny iridophores are really more obvious when you can see them more. Also, if the squid is like relaxing effectively, or if it's like knocked out with anesthetic, like you don't see any of those chromatophores because none of them are active, and you get to see the sparkly iridophores beneath. But the cuttlefish or squid, or octopus for that matter, is kind of like taking all of that into consideration. So if it wants to be producing more of a green purple, it's gonna have fewer of its chromatophores active, so you can see more of that. And so sometimes it'll the iridophores are typically not quite so densely packed that you can't see past them to the white. below. So it's like if you only have your chromatophores all active, you're pretty much only going to see that top layer. You're not going to see the sparkles.
Right.
But if you have them inactive, then you get to see what's below. And so it's just a kind of like each one is a color on your palette wheel,
Right.
and the animals using all of these in concert to put the pattern together.
That's so cool. I love that so much. It's just so cool. It's truly fascinating. And I appreciate that you, being such a good communicator, can explain all that so well. So thanks for taking the time for that. I've got one last thing to ask before we end this. Again, this is all based because I started this whole process on the idea of Endangered Species Days was coming up. Of course, it was now a couple of weeks ago. But I still want to ask this because I've gotten some wonderful, wonderful answers from a wide variety of people. It's a pretty straightforward question, one you've probably heard before from somebody along the lines of basically you're talking about squid conservation or squid science or whatever, taking care of the ocean, and someone's response to you is, well, I'm only one person. What does it matter? What can I do for an endangered species or for an environment? So what's your take on that? What's your response to that?
I know it can feel like super overwhelming when you think about your one drop in the bucket, but look at what one person has been able to accomplish in a lot of different areas of the world. Like sometimes one person can really be a flashpoint for a lot of change that happens. And so, yeah, maybe if you stay quiet and you just do what's right for the environment yourself, first of all, that in and of itself is great because it's just the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. But if you communicate with your family and your friends and you try to work on getting policy in government that helps everybody get better at these things, that's huge. That's not just you, that's everybody. And we need people advocating for endangered species and the environment to make that kind of change happen. And so a lot of times people, when they all sit by themselves and just sort of like think, I'm just one person and don't do anything, like nothing happens. But when you all communicate amongst yourselves and like team up as a group, it's amazing what we can do together when we, actually voice what we're interested in, because then lots of other people that are also just sitting and being quiet will be like, yeah, that's important to me too. And then as a group, we can make huge changes, even if we're just one person.
Yep. And I think to take it even further, like you're saying with the policies and being able to, for one person to stand up and educate a few others and then they join forces. I mean, it's a great example of the importance of the policies we do have in place for environmental protections and ocean protections, because it's not that, and I hear this sometimes, people seem to think, well, I don't want big government dictating what we do. It's like, well, the policies that are in place aren't creating a big government. It's creating laws that, so if someone says, hey, there's a bigger entity breaking that law, or there's a threat to that animal that is currently breaking the law, we can use a judicial system to hold those entities accountable. That are a bigger threat to the environment or that animal or whatever the case may be. It's not necessarily creating a bigger government. So I just want to add that in there, because sometimes people get their hackles up when we talk about policies, but you're absolutely correct. It's like we all live downstream from something and everything else lives downstream from us. So it's all interconnected like that. So those policies are important and working together is important. So a good one. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I cannot thank you enough. I just completely geeked out about this whole squid talk thing and the color change. I love it. I can't learn enough about them. And marine biology has never been my avenue. It's always been mostly terrestrial species. And so I just love being able to pick the brain of someone who is in a different part of the world than I am when it comes to the ecosystem. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
Of course. And anybody watching right now or watching this later, I'll post this on IGTV. A lot of the questions and stuff that comes up in the feed below as we're talking, those questions don't get transferred into the Instagram, television, or IGTV recording of this. So if you had a question you'd like myself or Sarah to answer, please leave it in the comments. It'll be posted in about an hour, maybe hour and a half, depending on how fast I am with it. And we'll circle back and make sure we get your questions answered. So with that, Sarah, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and let you go, and I'll sign off to my audience too, okay?
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know you guys, I'm usually when giving animal facts and people are asking questions, but for me, this really was a treat on so many levels, because I have always been so fascinated by squid. Like marine life in general has been interesting, I've got bad sinuses. I used to snorkel a lot when I was younger, but as I got older, I couldn't go down much more than a few feet without being in severe pain. So I kind of have not been back in the deep waters like I was when I was younger. But sea life is so fascinating on so many levels. There's so much we don't know because it's so deep. And then be able to talk to someone like Sarah to be able to ask a direct question. I totally geeked out. I'm not even trying to hide it. That was so fun. That is so cool. So anyhow, I'll leave it with that. I will just have to say, I'm going to go back and watch this again because it was so cool. No, seriously though, she brings up a good point that as many actually as everyone has brought up a good point at the end of these videos, talking about how one person can make a difference. And I think it's definitely important to signify or to highlight talking about policy creation and maintaining those policies through the proper channels of government. It does not create a bigger government that dictates what we can and cannot do. It allows the common citizen to be able to point out when something's being done wrong for an endangered species or a threatened species or an ecosystem or even this ecosystem they live in, and to have the opportunity to take that to court, or at least have something stronger than just saying, hey, that's wrong, to help defend those animals and protect those that need protection. So great point, Sarah. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Everybody else, I hope you have a wonderful day. It's Wednesday. We have special things happening tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. We have a 1 o'clock guest also tomorrow. And then we have a 7 o'clock special edition of, for lack of a better name for it right now, the Jordan and Rick Show. So Jordan, if you're in here or you want to add, if we have a name for this, I don't know. Jordan, Jungle Jordan and I have started something for Thursday nights. This coming Thursday will be our second episode of it. We get on, we have fun, we talk for about a half hour or so, maybe an hour, depends on where it takes us. We do a lot more interaction with those that are leaving comments in the stream. I've got the first episode in my IGTV if you want to check that out. And tomorrow he will host on his account. So I will hopefully see you all there at 7 o'clock Pacific. And prior to that, 1 o'clock Pacific, I have another special guest to talk about their most memorable animal moment. So with that, I just want to leave you with, I hope you are well. And yeah, have a good one, everybody.